It was a crisp Friday night in Houston, the kind that made even traffic on I-10 feel festive. Rachel had been buzzing all week about the annual corporate gala, the summit as her firm branded it. I'd gone with her the last 3 years, each event more extravagant than the last. Still, something about this one felt different. Or maybe I was just imagining things. That's the dangerous part about doubt, it doesn't knock. It slips in unnoticed and settles behind your ribs. Rachel looked stunning as usual. Navy satin dress, hair swept back in that way that revealed just enough of her neckline to remind me why I fell in love with her. But when she turned toward the mirror to apply a second coat of mascara, I caught something in her reflection. Not nervousness. Not excitement. Something rehearsed. She had that look people get right before going on stage. The kind where they're not worried about forgetting their lines, but whether someone else will read between them. We arrived just past 7, valet tags exchanged with that familiar ease couples develop over time. I held her hand as we walked in, though she barely squeezed back. I chalked it up to nerves. The place was glittering, low lighting, linen-draped tables, champagne towers, and a jazz trio playing something smooth but forgettable. Rachel was immediately swarmed by colleagues. I smiled, stepped aside, grabbed us drinks, played the role of the supportive husband. That's when I saw him, Jonathan. Tall, well-dressed, the type of guy you'd assume had been class president, quarterback, and prom king. He had this easy confidence, and more importantly, he had Rachel's full attention. Not in the way coworkers talk about quarterly numbers. This was different. Focused. Familiar. I watched her body language shift, shoulders relaxed, laughter softer. An asterisk, mate. Then came the moment that's burned into my memory like a scar that won't fade. A few of them were getting together for a group photo near the company's banner. Someone made a joke about couples needing to stand together, and I saw Rachel laugh as she dug into her clutch. It was subtle, fluid even. But I caught it. She slipped off her wedding ring. I blinked. At first, I thought maybe I'd misread it. Maybe it was a nervous habit. Maybe the ring was pinching her finger. But then I saw her tilt her hand, sliding it into the shadows of her purse, eyes scanning the group like she didn't want to be seen. Then, right after, she stepped into frame beside Jonathan. It felt like my heart slowed down for a second too long. I stood there, champagne flute in hand, smiling for no one. They all posed together, Jonathan's arm casually behind her back, her body angled toward him like they'd been practicing. When it was over, she stepped away quickly, ring still tucked away like it had never existed. When she returned to me, she kissed my cheek, told me how proud she was I'd come even though I hated these things. I smiled, nodded. Didn't say anything about what I saw. Not then. On the drive home, Rachel chatted about the firm's expansion, about who might be up for regional director, about how exhausting it was to always be on. Her voice had that familiar cadence, light, a bit theatrical, like she was reciting a script. Somewhere between Montrose and Memorial, I asked, careful to keep my voice light, why'd you take off your ring before the photo? She paused just long enough for it to matter. What? Oh, it kept catching on my dress, she said, waving it off with a laugh. You know how it gets with silk. Didn't want to rip anything? I nodded, watching her profile lit by passing headlights. Right? Makes sense. She kept talking, but I stopped listening. It was the way she said it. Too quick. Too prepared. Like she'd already thought of the excuse before I asked. And maybe that was the moment everything changed for me. Because it wasn't just the action, it was the ease with which she lied about it. The ring had always meant something to her. More than most people. I remember when we picked it out, how she insisted on a certain cut, how she teared up when I first slid it on her finger. It wasn't just a ring. It was a promise. A marker. But that night, she wore it like a costume accessory. Something to be removed for the right audience. I didn't press her. Not that night. I told myself maybe I was overthinking it. Maybe the stress of work, the strangeness of seeing her in a different world, her world, was making me paranoid. I tried to shake it off. I really did. But the image stuck with me. It followed me through the next day, through morning coffee and the sound of her humming while folding laundry. It was there when I checked her calendar later that week and saw a strategy off-site pop up that she hadn't mentioned. It was there when she left for work with her second phone in her bag, the one she used just for her team. Little things. Little cracks. But the thing about cracks is, once you see one, you can't stop looking for more. That night at the gala was the start. A single gesture that felt like nothing to anyone else. But to me, it was the moment the floor beneath my marriage began to shift. After the gala, something in me changed. Not outwardly, not in any way someone would notice, but inside, a quiet fracture had formed. That single moment with Rachel taking off her ring planted a seed. And once a seed is there, it doesn't just die. It grows. Sometimes slowly, sometimes all at once. First, I tried to shake it off. Told myself it was nothing. A dress snag. A photo op. But the way she laughed it off, the smoothness of her answer, it felt rehearsed. And once I started re-examining that moment, I couldn't stop myself from re-examining everything. It began subtly. That Monday morning, she left earlier than usual. No goodbye kiss, just a quick shout from the hallway that she had a tight stand-up with the new project team. She used to kiss me on the forehead even when she was running late. I shrugged it off, until she didn't come home until nearly 9 p.m. Traffic, she said, followed by an impromptu dinner with her manager and a few others. Said she didn't want to wake me by texting. Except I wasn't asleep. I was sitting on the couch, nursing a half-drunk beer and staring at the front door like it owed me an explanation. The next morning, I checked her work calendar. Something I'd never done before. I had access because we occasionally synced events. But what I found didn't line up. Her calendar had nothing scheduled past 4:30 that day. No meetings. No dinner. When I asked her about it, casually over breakfast, she paused before saying, "Oh, it was last minute. Some team building thing. Didn't even make it to the calendar." Team building. The first time she used that term, I bought it. But when it became her go-to answer every time she disappeared for hours, it started to ring hollow. Especially since those events always seemed to involve Jonathan. His name started popping up more frequently. Casual at first. He led this workshop, he shared that resource, he's just so motivated. Then there was the second phone. A year ago, she had asked for a work phone to keep boundaries. Said it helped her disconnect when she got home. I respected that, loved that even, until I realized that phone was never on at home. Not even charging. It was always tucked away in her bag, out of sight, like some sort of digital ghost. One night, curiosity got the better of me. While she was in the shower, I opened her work bag. The phone was there, powered down. I don't know what I expected. That it would spring to life and show me something incriminating? That it would explain where my wife disappeared to at night while pretending to be swamped with spreadsheets? All I found was a faint trace of unfamiliar perfume. Not her usual vanilla sandalwood blend, but something sharper. Muskier. Something new. I put the phone back exactly where I found it, closed the bag, and stared at myself in the hallway mirror. What are you doing, Vince? That question haunted me, because the truth was, I didn't recognize myself. I wasn't the type to snoop or speculate. I'd always prided myself on trusting Rachel. But that trust now felt like a loaded P*N I'd handed her without checking the safety. Her demeanor changed too. Not drastically, but enough. The warmth in her voice was tempered with distance. The way she used to curl up next to me on the couch, even if we were both on our laptops, that stopped. She stayed in the home office longer. Claimed she was in flow. When we did talk, it was surface level. One evening, I suggested we plan a weekend getaway. Just the two of us. Something we hadn't done in a while. She blinked, then smiled. But it didn't reach her eyes. I'd love that, she said. But this quarter is just insane. Maybe later in the spring. I nodded. Said I understood. But I didn't. Not really. That weekend, she had a client dinner. I didn't ask for details. I just watched her leave in a fitted black dress I hadn't seen before. Lipstick darker than usual. Hair done in soft waves. I stood by the front window as she climbed into an Uber. She didn't look back. After she left, I sat on the edge of our bed, staring at the space where her phone usually charged. I knew I was spiraling. But the thing about suspicion is that once you let it in, it doesn't loosen its grip. It starts to demand answers. I started keeping notes. I never told anyone this. Not even now, really. But I opened a spreadsheet. Labeled it innocuously, tax season notes. In it, I logged every unusual late night, every discrepancy in her stories, every time she mentioned Jonathan. Felt paranoid, felt desperate, but it also felt necessary. Then came the scent. She started wearing a different perfume. Subtle, barely there, but I noticed. It wasn't one she'd ever worn around me before. And when I asked about it, she smiled like she didn't remember. Oh, must be a sample from work. The girls bring them in sometimes. The girls? She never used that phrase before. Her team was mixed. I'd met some of them. They weren't a gaggle of influencers trading beauty tips, they were hard-nosed consultants in flats and blazers. Still, I nodded. Smells nice, I said. Thanks, she replied, already walking away. I stared at the back of her head and wondered if she was walking away from more than just that conversation. Eventually, I began checking her location, not openly but through the family-sharing app we'd set up when we both traveled frequently. It was meant for safety. But on a Wednesday night in March, it showed her in a residential neighborhood about 30 minutes away from her office. She said she was working late. I stared at the pin on the map. It didn't look like a restaurant or an office. It looked like a house. That night, she came home past 10. Kicked off her shoes, gave me a quick kiss, and apologized for missing dinner. Long day, she said. We're trying to land this contract. I smiled. Asked if it was going well. It's tricky, she said. But we're making progress. I poured her a glass of wine. She took 2 sips, then claimed she was exhausted and went to bed early. I sat there with her untouched glass and the app still open on my phone, the location history still glowing like a warning flare. This wasn't just distance anymore. This was a pattern. And I was no longer willing to ignore it. It's strange how a man can look at something he built brick by brick, day by day, and not realize it's being torn down until he's standing in the rubble. I didn't want to be the guy sneaking around or stalking his wife like some second-rate detective. But after enough unanswered questions and perfectly crafted excuses, my need for the truth outpaced my pride. That was the moment I remembered the GPS tracker still installed in Rachel's car. It wasn't for surveillance originally. We'd added it during a string of break-ins around the neighborhood, thinking it'd give us peace of mind. And for a while, it did. But now, that peace had fractured and I was staring at the tool that might finally break the illusion I was clinging to. That Friday, I watched the tracker ping live as Rachel left for her overnight conference. Except the dot didn't move toward the airport nor toward any hotel downtown. It took a quiet detour through suburbia, Green Lake Heights, to be exact. Rows of well-kept 2-story homes with trimmed hedges and picket fences. The kind of neighborhood where secrets are buried under freshly cut grass and a smile from the HOA president. I drove there an hour later, keeping my distance. Parked 3 houses down from where Rachel's car sat calmly in the driveway of a cream-colored house with blue shutters. Lights on. Curtains drawn. I didn't know who lived there. Yet. The first night I just watched. The second night I came prepared. I bought a compact trail camera, the kind hunters use for wildlife. It had motion sensors, night vision, and, most importantly, it could be mounted across the street without drawing attention. I placed it discreetly in a tree and angled it toward the front of the house. Then I waited. By the time I reviewed the footage from the third night, I wasn't looking for answers anymore. I was looking for confirmation. And I got it. There she was, Rachel, pulling into the driveway just before 9 p.m. dressed casual but polished. She stepped out, glanced over her shoulder like she was expecting someone or checking for someone, and then walked toward the front door. 20 seconds later, the door opened. Jonathan. I didn't know whether to scream or throw up. I felt everything all at once and nothing at all. He stood there, framed by the porch light, wearing a t-shirt and that same smug, easygoing posture I'd come to associate with corporate charisma. He smiled as he reached for her. They embraced. Not the way friends do. Not even the way you hug someone you're having a fling with. It was longer. Familiar. An asterisk mate. She kissed him. And then they walked inside. I shut the footage down. Sat in the dark. No music, no TV, just the hum of the refrigerator and my own breathing. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I just stared. The next morning, Rachel came home around 7:45, fresh from her conference. Hair a little tousled, makeup reapplied, her outfit different from the one she wore out the door the day before. She walked into the kitchen like nothing had happened. Said her flight landed late, that she hadn't slept much. I poured her coffee. Black, no sugar, just how she liked it. That conference must have been brutal, I said, eyes on her. She smiled and nodded. You have no idea. She was right. I had no idea the extent of her deception. But I had proof now. Cold, time-stamped proof. Over the next few days, I didn't confront her. Instead, I doubled down. I returned to that neighborhood and sat in my car at dusk. I watched them arrive separately and sometimes together. I recorded video. Snapped photos. Zoomed in on gestures, hands on hips, a shoulder brush, fingers laced together as they stepped inside the house. I didn't know who owned the house, but the utilities were under Jonathan's name, which I found through a property records search. It was a rental. A quiet, out-of-the-way place likely chosen for that exact reason. This wasn't a fling. This was a second life. I began collecting it all: video, photos, timestamps, cross-referenced calendar entries, location data. It felt surreal, like I was curating evidence against the woman I'd once promised forever to. But every time I hesitated, I'd remember the way she smiled when she mentioned his name in passing. The ringless hand at the gala. The lies layered with just enough truth to pass a glance. One night, while watching live from the car, I saw something that hit me harder than the kiss. Rachel arrived earlier than usual. Jonathan wasn't home yet. She let herself in with a key. A key. She wasn't just visiting. She had access. An hour later, they emerged from the house laughing. Wine glasses in hand, walking toward the backyard patio like it was something they did every weekend. Like this was their routine. That same night, back home, she brought me dinner from our favorite Thai place. Said she missed me. Asked about my week. I watched her lie without blinking, and for the first time, I didn't feel betrayed, I felt disgusted. This wasn't just betrayal. This was orchestration. And now I had what I needed. But I wasn't going to blow up. I wasn't going to scream or cry or beg for answers I already had. No. That would give her too much power. Instead, I began working on something else. Something measured. Something lasting. Because when the truth finally comes to light, I wanted her to feel what it's like to stand in front of an audience with nothing left to hide behind. There's a quiet power in waiting. When you know something, really know something, and you watch the person who betrayed you walk around unaware, it stops being about rage. It becomes strategy. Precision. Like setting up dominoes and planning exactly when and where to flick the first one. By the time the next company event rolled around, a quarterly leadership mixer downtown, I had everything in place. Rachel had mentioned it weeks ago, said it was invite only for high performers and executive favorites. Said she wasn't sure if spouses were allowed, which I found amusing considering the woman had forgotten to wear her ring for a public photo. Should I come? I asked casually over breakfast. She hesitated, barely missing a beat. It's mostly networking and team stuff. Probably super boring for you. I smiled. Then you won't mind if I swing by near the end? Maybe meet you for dinner after. She blinked. Oh. Sure, I guess. Just let me know. That was her fatal mistake. She didn't realize I already had my invitation. A friend of mine, Elliot, was on the PR team for Rachel's firm. We played basketball together back in college and stayed loosely connected through social media. One polite message, one phone call, and I had all-access credentials to the mixer. I told Elliot I was planning a surprise for Rachel, something sweet to recognize all her hard work. He thought it was romantic. I didn't correct him. The gift took a few days to design. I wanted something she'd never see coming. So I crafted a custom photo album, leather-bound, her initials embossed in gold on the front. The kind of thing you'd expect to be filled with congratulations and team snap *TS. Inside, however, was something else entirely. Page 1 started simple, a candid of Rachel stepping into Jonathan's rented house, time-stamped. Page 2, the two of them on the porch, wine glasses in hand, leaning close. Page 3, a zoomed-in *T of her hand on his thigh, her ring finger bare. The rest of the pages followed suit, crisp images from the trail cam and street-level lens, each one carefully placed, each timestamp verified. All cataloged without commentary. Just the truth in glossy print. I wrapped the book in silver paper, tied it with a navy ribbon, her favorite color, and attached a simple tag. To Rachel, a celebration of all you've built. The day of the mixer, I dressed like any other executive in that room, a charcoal blazer, white shirt, calm expression. I arrived early, nodded politely to the few people I recognized, and found the events coordinator. I handed her the package. This is for Rachel Breyer, I said. She's being honored today. It's a small token of appreciation from the family. Would you mind presenting it after the photo reel? The woman smiled. Of course. That's so thoughtful. Rachel arrived an hour later, floating through the crowd in a forest green dress, all smiles and professional charm. She didn't see me. Not yet. I stayed near the back, watching her interact with colleagues, including, of course, Jonathan. They weren't overly flirtatious, but their proximity told its own story. The shared smirks. The private eye contact. The body language of people who'd crossed lines behind closed doors and assumed the world would never find out. Eventually, the lights dimmed and the host took the mic. Tonight, we're highlighting a few standout contributors to our firm's record quarter. Let's give it up for Rachel Breyer, who led the MarTech initiative with extraordinary vision. Applause erupted. Rachel smiled wide, walking up to the small stage with practiced grace. She stood beside the host, hands clasped, beaming like she just won a Lifetime Achievement Award. And as a special surprise, the host added, "We were given something to share with you. A personal gift from home." He handed her the silver-wrapped album. Rachel blinked, caught off guard. She looked toward the crowd, squinting, maybe searching for me. I stepped slightly forward. Her eyes found mine. I nodded once. She smiled awkwardly and untied the ribbon. Peeled back the paper. Lifted the cover. Silence. It was subtle at first. Just a breath caught in her throat. Then her fingers froze. Page after page, her expression unraveled, smile fading, eyes widening, color draining from her face. There was no escape. The images were large enough for those in the front rows to see. People started whispering. Heads turned. A few gasped. I watched Jonathan's jaw tighten, watched him take one half step back as if he could disappear into the curtain. Rachel snapped the book shut. Her breathing was shallow. She looked out at the crowd, coworkers, clients, mentors, and realized what they were seeing. Not just the photos. The lie unraveling in real time. I need to step outside," she mumbled, voice cracking. She left the stage without another word. The room buzzed with confusion, with recognition. The host stood frozen, unsure how to recover. I waited a full 30 seconds, then turned and walked out calmly, past the valet, past the lobby, past the security who offered me a polite nod. As I stepped into the warm night air, I felt the weight lift, not the grief, not yet, but the burden of pretending I didn't know. The game was over. And she'd played herself. The fallout started before I even made it home. By the time I pulled into our driveway, I had 6 missed calls and a string of texts from Rachel, all variations of the same themes: panic, confusion, damage control. I didn't answer. I didn't even read the last few. I just placed the phone screen down on the counter, took a long shower, and poured myself a bourbon, neat. The house felt different now. Quieter. More honest. Rachel didn't come home that night. Maybe she thought I'd be furious. Maybe she was too embarrassed. Maybe she knew the battle was already lost. Either way, the silence was a gift. The next morning, the headlines started. Not national news, obviously, but internal communications, corporate whispers, and the HR equivalent of a 4-alarm fire. I knew some people inside her company. Not well, but well enough to hear the chatter. Jonathan was the first to go. Terminated effective immediately for violating the firm's conduct policy. They didn't name Rachel directly in the memo, but everyone connected the dots. He was escorted out mid-morning. No goodbye party, no severance. Just gone. Rachel was suspended pending an internal ethics review. She didn't text me that day. She didn't need to. I already knew what was coming. I didn't wait. I'd prepared my divorce paperwork weeks ago, quietly, methodically. I had spoken with a lawyer too, actually, just to make sure every legal knot was tied before I ever pulled a single thread. The prenuptial agreement Rachel and I signed 7 years ago had once seemed like a formality. Something to appease my father, who insisted on protecting the family's assets. Back then, Rachel had waved it off. Sure, she said, smiling. Whatever helps you sleep at night. Turns out it helped a lot. Because that prenup, along with the evidence I had compiled, ensured a clean break in my favor. The house? Mine. The joint investments? Separated, with mine untouched. The shared car? Hers, though she'd have to figure out what to do with it once her firm car was revoked. My lawyer filed the documents the next morning. No courtroom drama. No heated arguments. Just a quiet filing in a county clerk's office accompanied by a USB drive containing date-stamped photos, GPS logs, and excerpts from Rachel's work calendar inconsistencies. Enough to end the conversation before it began. She didn't fight it. When she finally reached out 3 days after the incident, it wasn't with rage or denial. It was a voice memo. "Vince? I don't even know where to begin," she said, her voice fragile and flat. "I know you hate me. You should. I made the worst mistake of my life, and now everything's broken. I can't fix this. I don't expect you to forgive me. I want you to know that none of it, Jonathan, the lies, none of it was worth what I lost." I didn't respond. There was nothing left to say. The firm pulled the plug on Rachel's leadership track. Her profile was scrubbed from the website within a week. She was put on unpaid leave indefinitely. I'd heard from a mutual acquaintance that a major contract had been dropped as a result of the scandal. Some investor firm from Dallas didn't like messy internal politics. In less than 2 weeks, Rachel went from being the rising star of the firm to a ghost no one wanted to mention in meetings. The social shift came next. We shared friends, or at least I thought we did. But loyalty has a way of revealing itself when people are forced to pick a side. Turns out, more of them picked mine than I expected. I started getting texts, quiet ones, from people I hadn't heard from in months. "Hey man, I heard. I just wanted to say I'm sorry. You didn't deserve that. Let's grab a beer sometime. Been too long." One from Rachel's former coworker, Erica, stood out. "She told me you were controlling, that you didn't care about her work." God, Vince, I believed her. I'm so sorry. It was jarring, realizing how deep her narrative had gone. She hadn't just cheated. She had laid the groundwork to justify it, to paint me as distant, dismissive, a man who wouldn't understand her ambitions. That part hurt more than I expected. But it also made things easier. Because when someone rewrites the story of your life together, you stop mourning the person they were. You start seeing them for who they are. The night the divorce was finalized, I didn't celebrate. I didn't toast or post some cryptic quote about healing. I just sat in the backyard with a blanket over my shoulders, watched the stars, and exhaled. A deep, quiet breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding for months. It was done. She was no longer my wife, and I was no longer the man waiting for answers from someone who only ever gave excuses. A few days later, I received a manila envelope in the mail. No return address. Inside was a folded note, written in Rachel's handwriting. "I lost everything, and I know I have no right to ask for anything else. But I wanted to thank you for not screaming, for not humiliating me worse than I humiliated myself. You could have burned it all down. Instead, you just walked away. That's what K***ls me the most. That you left with dignity, and I didn't. There was no signature, no apology, just those words. I didn't keep the letter. I didn't need to. Just when I thought I had turned the final page, a stray email changed everything. I was sorting through a backlog of messages, canceling joint subscriptions, updating account passwords, when I noticed a confirmation email for a spa reservation under Rachel's name. Odd, considering it had been sent to our shared inbox. But the details were what stopped me cold. The booking wasn't for one person. It was a couple's package. And the guest name? Laura, Rachel's best friend. Her confidant. The one who cried with us at our wedding and helped Rachel pick out my birthday gifts every year. At first, I thought maybe it was a glitch. But curiosity got the better of me. I started searching through old messages, text backups, any digital footprint I had access to. And there it was. A breadcrumb trail I hadn't thought to follow before. Venmo payments from Laura to Rachel labeled with vague emojis. Uber receipts that didn't match any timeline I'd been given. Restaurant bookings under aliases that tied back to Laura's accounts. Piece by piece, I uncovered the truth. Laura had helped coordinate the affair. She booked hotels under her name, covered for Rachel with mutual friends, lied to my face more than once with a warm smile and an "I'm so sorry you're going through this." Felt like betrayal all over again. I sent one last message. Short, final, and precise. To Rachel and Laura, the divorce is signed. The house is mine. So is my peace. You both made your choices together. Consider this my goodbye. Don't contact me again. I didn't wait for a reply. 3 months later, I was living in a different world. I relocated to a quiet coastal town in North Carolina, the kind of place where people still wave when you pass by. I took a consulting role at a small architecture studio, not for the money, but for the rhythm it gave me. Steady, focused, free of the chaos I left behind. I bought a modest house near the water, nothing flashy. 2 bedrooms, white siding, a porch with enough room for a hammock. I adopted 2 rescue dogs, Benny and Scout, who quickly became my constant shadows. Mornings were for fishing, afternoons for sketching or reading, evenings for slow walks along the shore. There were no more lies, no more second phones or missing hours. Rachel faded into memory not as a villain but as someone I no longer needed to understand. She lost her job from what I heard through a former colleague. Jonathan moved out of state. Laura? I didn't care enough to find out. They could have each other for all it mattered. I was done carrying the weight of what they broke. Because peace doesn't always come from justice. Sometimes it comes from walking away and never turning back.